sorry, my writing. Okay, so from the cornea then, light is going to enter a space, a specific space, in between the cornea and the iris. What specific space is that?
Anterior chamber.
The anterior chamber. So it's going to enter the anterior chamber. And the anterior chamber is part of a larger structure called the
Anterior cavity.
anterior cavity. So it's the anterior chamber of the anterior cavity. Okay, so that's where light's gonna enter. And then from there, it's gonna hit, or actually pass through an opening. And that opening is called the
Pupil.
pupil. You could also say the iris, but technically, I mean, it's flowing through the pupil. The iris surrounds it, okay? Then it's gonna enter another space in between the iris or the pupil and the lens. What space is that?
Posterior chamber.
That's the posterior chamber. Of a larger space called the anterior cavity. Okay. All right, so from the posterior chamber then, light hits a specific structure called the
Lens.
Okay, and then after the lens, light enters a space called the posterior cavity. That's filled with what kind of fluid? Vitreous humor. Okay, perfect. And then the very last structure that light's gonna hit on the back surface, posterior aspect of the eye is gonna be what? The retina, right? But what specific part of the retina did I say signifies the end of the light pathway?
Optic disc.
So there's two layers in the retina, right? So I said there's a neural layer and a pigmented layer. So which layer signifies the end of the light pathway? The pigmented layer, right? Because that's where it's gonna trap the light and hold on to it for processing. Okay. Okay, so that's the light pathway. Okay. Questions about the pathway of light? Again, this is a good, quick, either free response or like fill in the blank question kind of thing. Do you know your structures? Do you know the sequence? Yeah.
Will you need us, if it is like a free response, do you want us to put anterior chamber of anterior cavity, or just anterior chamber?
You can put either, it's fine.
Okay.
I prefer the whole thing, but I'm just assuming that you already know the chamber is part of the cavity. Right. Okay, alright, so we're good on that? Okay, so from the light pathway then we can go to the electrical pathway. Alright, so let's list off the structures on the electric pathway. Okay, so if we ended with the pigmented layer of the retina, then where do we start?
Photoreceptors.
Even before that, the photoreceptors lay on what structure? On the retina, but specifically where?
Neural.
The neural layer, right? So we're gonna start with the neural layer. Okay, good. And on that neural layer first, yes, we find photoreceptors. Okay, and the photoreceptors are what? What are your options?
Rods and cones.
Rods and cones, okay, good. So you can write photoreceptors, you can write rods and cones if you want, that's fine. You're just being really specific, that's fine. Okay, so photoreceptors get excited and then they excite what next structure in the chain?
Bipolar cells.
Bipolar cells. And bipolar cells excite what next structure in the chain? Ganglion cells. Okay, and then ganglion cells have their extensions that come off of them. cause ganglion cells are collections of cell bodies, so their extensions are what?
Axon.
Axons. So then we go to axons, right? And the axons collect in the PNS and form a nerve. Which nerve?
Optic nerve.
Optic CN2. Okay, so those are gonna combine to form optic CN2. Okay, then those nerves are gonna come to a crossing called the what? Optic chiasm, which is gonna lead those axons into what structure? Optic tract. And a tract we find in what part of the nervous system? CNS. Let's just be clear here. Optic CN2 we find in the PNS, right? Okay, because those are nerves. Okay, good. So then the optic tract is gonna send those signals, those electrical signals, to the main sensory relay station in the brain, which is what?
Thalamus.
The thalamus. And then the thalamus is gonna route that information where?
Visual cortex.
To the visual cortex, which is the
Occipital lobe.
occipital lobe. Occipital lobe. You can say visual cortex if you want, that's accurate. There you go, for conscious level processing. Fantastic. All right, so there you go. You got electrical pathway, you got the light pathway. Questions? Okay. I'll kind of review a couple structures here, on the eye when we do our review. And again, I'll post these review questions to Canvas. So you guys can utilize it. Okay, all right, so some of the questions on this review, I'm not gonna ask you. I mean, I'll kind of go through them and tell you pretty much which ones, just based on the wording and just, some of it's a little too general and we didn't talk about this, but again, these are questions pulled out of the textbook, so it's just a potpourri of things, okay? Okay, so number one, which of the following is not considered an endocrine gland?
The liver.
So what determines if something is an endocrine gland?
Ductless.
And secretes what? What do endocrine glands secrete? Hormones, okay. Does the thymus secrete hormones?
Yes.
Yes. Does the ovary?
Yes.
Yes. Does the pancreas?
Yes.
Yes. Does the liver? Nope. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, so because, oh well, come on, here we go. Because the hypothalamus produces hormones in addition to performing nervous function, it is considered to be, yes. Number two is
Neuroendocrine.
neuroendocrine. Again, we didn't really talk specifically about this particular label or this particular term, but you combine nerves with hormones, neuroendocrine, okay? Okay. Which of the following is supplied by up to 60 small suprarenal, is the key word here, arteries? Adrenal glands. Again, I'm not gonna ask you, this is kind of more of a generalized question. Okay. When sympathetic nerve fibers stimulate cells in the adrenal medulla to release epinephrine and norepinephrine during fight or flight, this secretion is controlled by what kind of stimuli? Neuron, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, you got those pre and post ganglionic neurons that are causing that reaction. Okay. What explains the ability of a circulating hormone to act at a specific target organ? So remember how I defined, a hormone, right? A?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. Because the hormone has to be sensitive to a certain receptor on that particular target cell in order to initiate a response. right? Okay, so that's why we call them triggers. Okay. The adenohypophysis, what is another term for the adenohypophysis? Anterior pituitary gland, okay, has a large anterior division, pars distalis, with 5 different endocrine cells secreting at least how many hormones?
7.
7, right? Good. Okay. Mammotropic cells of the adenohypophysis secrete what milk-stimulating hormone?
C.
B. B.
B, right? Prolactin. Formation of milk, milk stimulating, okay? We talked about formation and we talked about secretion, right? So formation is prolactin. We never talked about a lactiferous hormone or a mammillary stimulating hormone. So the only 2 really you have to choose from is prolactin and growth hormone. Okay. Gonadotropins are actually 2 hormones, including what?
A and C.
A and C, right? Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, they both go to the ovaries and testes and promote the formation of gametes and or secondary sex characteristics, right? Okay. Okay, 4 of the 7 hormones produced by the pars distalis are said to be tropic in nature. Which of these hormones are representative tropic hormones?
A.
Right? What's the definition of a tropic hormone? It's a hormone that,
Acts on another gland.
right, triggers another endocrine gland to secrete its own hormone, right? So TSH and ACTH are that. Okay. Okay, which of the following produces the highest number of different hormones?
C.
Kind of repetition here, yeah, C, pituitary gland. Such a small gland, such an important endocrine job. Okay, what portion of the pituitary gland is a structural extension of hypothalamic neurons?
C.
C, right? Neurohypophysis. What's another name for the neurohypophysis?
Posterior.
Posterior pituitary gland, yeah. I like letter D, null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is fine. Okay, let's see where we are. Oh. 12, iodine is integral to the function of the hormone produced by this gland,
A.
the thyroid gland, right? Because the thyroid gland produces what hormone?
Thyroid hormone.
Thyroid hormone, TH, yeah, gotta have iodine in there. What's the precursor to thyroid hormone? Thyroglobulin, and where is that stored in the thyroid gland?
Posterior pituitary.
In the thyroid gland, thyroglobulin is stored in the, starts with the C, the colloid of those thyroid follicles, right, that you guys were looking at under the microscope, okay. All right, in adults, this gland, well, we didn't really talk about this. Anyone have an idea?
Parathyroid.
It's actually the pineal gland. I didn't mention it, so again, lucky number 13 you can skip. I don't think that's really important to know. General terms. Which of the following organs is actually considered 2 endocrine glands in one?
C.
Yeah, I agree. C, right? Because you've got the adrenal cortex and you've got the adrenal medulla, and they both secrete different hormones. So they're basically like 2 different endocrine glands. Okay. Okay. Androgens are secreted and directly converted into estrogen by follicle cells in the
C.
female ovary, right? Yeah. The uterus doesn't secrete hormones. It responds to hormones, but it doesn't secrete hormones. Ovaries do. Okay. The cells of this structure secrete the protein hormone calcitonin when blood calcium levels are high. The thyroid gland, right? Thyroid gland secretes calcitonin Okay. Which are modified ganglionic sympathetic neurons that secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood to enhance fight or flight?
No. Yes.
So what did we call those postganglionic neurons?
Chromatin cells.
Chromatin cells, right? Chromatin cells. Okay. The pancreas can be described as how?
D.
D.
Both A and B, right? So the pancreas, what's the exocrine function? It secretes
Digestive enzyme.
digestive enzymes, right? And endocrine function is it regulates what in the body?
Sugar.
Blood sugar, right? Good. When you think of T lymphocytes, you think of
Thyroid.
the thymus, right? Bless you. Yeah. Kind of goes back to a previous unit of study, but you guys are learning about the thymus in lab, so it's always helpful. What is the most common form of hyperthyroidism which causes the eyes to protrude?
Graves' disease.
Graves' disease, good. 21 we can skip because I didn't talk about tumors. The ANS arises from what part of the PNS?
B.
General, visceral, motor, right? Okay, good. Rest and digest is to this as fight or flight is to this.
B.
B, that should be pretty much automatic by now, with all the repetition we've had on that topic. Okay, good. Autonomic fibers arising from the thoracolumbar section of the spinal cord are in what division?
C.
Sympathetic, right? Because A, somatic motor, is that part of the ANS? No, it's somatic. It's skeletal muscle effectors, right? We're not talking about that. Okay, generally, sympathetic nerves have long fibers, while parasympathetic fibers have long these fibers.
A.
I'm hearing A and B.
A.
I agree with A. Okay. So again, good for review. What neurotransmitter is released by all preganglionic fibers?
B.
B, right? Acetylcholine? Yep. Okay. What about postganglionic fibers in the parasympathetic division? Acetylcholine, and in the sympathetic division?
A and C.
Epinephrine and norepinephrine, right? Adrenaline. Okay. The outflow of the parasympathetic nervous system originates from
Cranial sacral. AC.
both A and C because we also call it what division? The craniosacral division, right? Okay, good. What are the effects of parasympathetic stimulation of CN3, oculomotor nerve?
B. D. D.
I agree with D. The pupils are going to constrict and the lens is going to bulge to allow you to see things closer to you. Okay. Again, B is, it gets kind of confusing because it has half of the answer, so again, I wouldn't ask the question like this, because that's gonna lead to a little bit of confusion. Okay, 29, the parasympathetic fibers of which nerve stimulate most of the glandular secretion in the head?
C.
C. Good. Yeah, make sure you know your cranial nerves and their functions, at least 3, 7, 9, and 10, which is what we're talking about. So parasympathetic fibers from innervate the visceral organs of the thorax and abdomen.
D.
D.
D. D, CN10, which is what?
Vegas.
Vegas. How do you spell Vegas?
VAGUS.
VAGUS, good. It's not the Las Vegas nerve. Okay. Thinking about a favorite food increases levels of salivation because of. Salivation is the key word here, so.
C.
A.
I'm hearing A, B, C, D.
All
All of
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
Okay, but C, okay, so stimulation of parasympathetic CN1. What is the function of CN1? Smell. Are we talking about smell? No, we're not. Okay, so stimulation of parasympathetic portions of CN7. Is that true? So 7's facial and 9 is glossopharyngeal, and part of both of their functions is what glands? Your salivary glands,
Yeah.
right? Just different ones. So the answer to 31 is D. Mhm. Okay. So again, make sure when you're reading questions, you read what the question is asking you. If you're just assuming letter C, you're reading it too fast and you're throwing smell into there, and smell is not a part of that question. It's just salivation, which hints salivary glands, okay, which ones have salivary glands as part of their function. Okay, sympathetic fibers exit the CNS.
Okay.
Is it all of the above? Is sympathetic fibers somatic motor? No. Okay. Sympathetic is part of what division? The ANS, which is also called general visceral motor. So you can cross out C automatically, right? So sympathetic fibers exit the CNS. So if it's exiting the CNS, is it a postganglionic fiber? No. Which one is it? It's preganglionic. So B and C you can knock out, which knocks out D and leaves you with A, right? Okay. Okay. 33. The sympathetic nervous system is more complex than parasympathetic because it innervates. Again, this is a question I'm not going to ask you because we didn't really discuss. We talked about sympathetic effectors, which include blood vessels, skin, which includes sweat glands and erector pili muscle. So it's pretty much all the above on this, but I'm not going to ask you a question like that. So 33 you can ask. Oh, 34 is good though. So okay, read 34, and then let me know which one you think, or we can talk them all through. So letter A, the postganglionic axon passes through the sympathetic trunk. Is that a true statement? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, passes through sympathetic trunk, exits on a splanchnic nerve, and synapses on a collateral ganglion. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that doesn't, it's not the answer. B, the preganglionic axon ascends or descends in the sympathetic trunk to synapse in another trunk ganglion. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a true statement, so B doesn't count. C, postganglionic fibers extend from the collateral ganglion to the visceral organ via an autonomic nerve plexus.
No.
No. Why? What did we say a nerve plexus supplies? What do nerve plexuses supply in the body?
Muscle innervation.
Yeah, muscle innervation, but specifically what regions in the body? So we have cervical, brachial, lumbar, and sacral. And we say they serve the extremities, right? The arms and the legs. Okay, that's what plexuses supply, your arms and your legs. Okay? The effectors that we're talking about in this unit of study, okay, are not in your arms and your legs, right? They're in your thorax and abdomen, visceral organs, right? So that pretty much negates C, because that's an incorrect statement. So letter D, the preganglionic axon synapses with a postganglionic neuron in the sympathetic trunk ganglion at the same level and exits on the spinal nerve at that level.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. That's the first pathway we talked about. So the answer to this question is
C.
C. Okay. The prevertebral ganglia.
A.
Don't read it in entirety, not too fast. Okay, so prevertebral ganglia are not paired and not segmentally arranged. Is that true?
True.
True. Are also known as collateral ganglia. True or false? True. Okay. All lie posterior to the vertebral column?
False.
False, right? They're not called postvertebral ganglia, they're called prevertebral ganglia because they live anteriorly to the vertebral column. So the answer to the question is D. Okay. The highest concentration of sympathetic innervation is found in the, just think logically, where do you think you'd find that?
A.
In the brain. Mm-hmm. Yep. Again, I'm not gonna ask you that because I'm gonna get a myriad of answers for that, I'm sure. Okay, so identify the innervation responsible for the dilation of pupils. A, right, that's a fight or flight response. Okay, good. Identify the innervation responsible for sweating.
A.
A, right? Okay, that's, again, sympathetic response. It's like working out at the gym. Identify the innervation responsible for voiding the bladder.
A.
A.
B.
A.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so if you're in a fight or flight situation, do you have time to go to the bathroom?
No.
No, you don't. So what's the answer?
B.
B. Are any of these answers going to be somatic?
No.
No. So if any of the options have somatic in the answer, you cross that one off automatically, right? Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be, okay? Because then you're adding another option that's incorrect, but you're thinking, oh, it is somatic. No, we're not talking somatic, we're talking visceral motor. Okay, identify the innervation responsible for an erection. And this is part of that little chart in your review packet.
B. B.
Okay, so it's good, I'm hearing A or B, okay? It's not what you think, okay? So an erection is parasympathetic. It's ejaculation that's sympathetic. Yeah, it's kind of an unusual combination there, okay. Okay, the levator palpebrae superioris.
D.
Voluntarily opens the eye, right? It's on the top of the eyelid, skeletal muscle. You have volitional control over it. Okay, sclera. the above, right? Those are all accurate statements. Mhm. It's kind of crazy that it's an extension of the dura mater of your brain. So when you're looking at the whites of the eye, you're looking at brain tissue. Photoreceptor, sensitive to color.
B.
B.
Cones, right? C for color. Okay. In the visual pathway, each cerebral cortex. We're not talking about the retina. We're not talking about the optic nerve. We're talking about the cerebral cortex.
D.
B.
B.
D.
Ooh, this is a good one. It's a good one. Okay.
Oh, is it A?
Okay, so does the cerebral cortex receive images?
No.
Mm-mm. It's not receiving images, it's receiving synapses. It's not receiving images. Okay. Does the cerebral cortex, left or right, receive input from both visual fields? Right? It receives input from only one side or the other, so you're only getting half of the visual field. So the left cerebral cortex is responsible for the right visual field, right? The right visual cortex is responsible for the left visual field, okay? So the answer is
C.
C. Okay, so again, when you're going through that pathway, talk it out, all right? Make sure that you understand what's going where. Okay, rod cells. This is kind of repetition, so it's color, C, just a different option for me to ask the question. Auricle or pinna?
D.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's everything, right? It's all of the above. Okay, good. What structure forms the boundary between the external and middle ear?
A.
The tympanic membrane, right? Good. Okay, the short tube running medially from the auricle to the eardrum is?
D.
From the auricle to the eardrum
D.
is D, right? It's not the eustachian
Oh.
tube or the pharyngotympanic tube. Okay. The auditory ossicles.
D.
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 All of the above, right? Yep. Okay. Okay, so, again, 50, I don't really like the way it's just acts 50. I'm not gonna ask that, it's too confusing, the way it's worded, I don't really like it. Okay, which of the following is a function of the vestibule? Static equilibrium. Yep, or linear acceleration, right? Angular acceleration, again, that's too, I wouldn't use that as an option, because that's too confusing, you'd be like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I wouldn't word it like that, but yes, D is the answer. 52, what is the function of semicircular canals? Again, this one doesn't have the answer on it. Angular should be instead rotational, okay? Because that's what semicircular canals are responsible for, rotation. So again, I would word this different, so you can ax 52 if you want, or you can reword it to your liking. Okay, 53, the tall jelly-like mass into which the hairs of the hair cells of the crista ampullaris project is called the
D.
the cupula. Cupula. Okay. Do I even like this question? Well, what do you guys think the answer is?
D.
Yeah, it is D. So it's in the middle of the bony labyrinth, it's smack dab in the middle of the cochlea and, the semicircular canals. It does lie medially to the middle ear, right, cause it's part of an extension of the cochlea, and it does lie medial to the oval window, so technically that's all correct, anatomically. Okay, let's get into some questions here. What hormone controls metabolic rate?
Thyroid.
Thyroid hormone, TH. What is the trigger mechanism for it to be released? What causes it to be released? TSH, right, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, good. Okay, what's the largest purely endocrine gland? The thyroid, okay. And then 58, what is the hormone that inhibits osteoclast activity? So we're getting at the difference between calcitonin and parathyroid hormone, right? So in the previous question, I asked you about calcitonin, right? And calcitonin is secreted when you have high levels of calcium, right? And so calcitonin is going to target two places, bone and kidneys, right? Okay, so if the trigger is high calcium, then what is it gonna tell osteoclasts to do? It's gonna tell them to slow down, take a nap, right? Okay, and then for the kidney, it's going to excrete calcium, tell the kidneys to get rid of it, cause there's too much in the blood. Okay, so that's calcitonin shell. So parathyroid hormone is secreted when? When calcium is low in the body, right? So that's why we say calcitonin usually works when you're younger, because when you're younger, you have more of a tendency to have elevated calcium levels. As you get older, that goes out the window, and most of us are calcium deprived, right? So a depressed calcium environment is typically what we're gonna experience throughout the course of our life. So parathyroid hormone gets secreted. It's got 3 targets, right? It's also got bone and kidney as a target, but what else? The GI tract, and what does it tell the GI tract to do? To increase your absorption of calcium, right? What does it tell bone to do? Okay, so it tells the osteoclasts to wake back up again and get to work, and it tells the kidneys
Hold on.
to hold on to calcium because we're too low right now, okay? Mhm. There you go. All right. Name a gland, there's more than one, that is both nervous and endocrine in nature. There's 2 options here. Pituitary is one,
Adrenal.
adrenal gland's the other. Yep. Right? So adrenal gland, you've got adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla, and adrenal medulla is the nervous portion. Right? And your pituitary, you've got the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary, and the posterior pituitary is the nervous portion. Right? Okay. So you have 2 options for that question. Name the class of hormones secreted during stress. So first name the hormone that we secrete. Cortisol. And what's the class that it belongs to?
Cortico something.
Starts with a G. Glucocorticoid. If I can say it properly. Glucocorticoids, yes. Aldosterone is part of mineral corticoids. Okay? Okay, so where is cortisol secreted from? The adrenal cortex. Good. Okay. Do all endocrine glands secrete their hormones into the bloodstream?
Yes.
Yes.
True or false? The endocrine cells of the pancreas are in islets, where the exocrine cells are in the acini.
True.
True. Yep, that's true. Yep. The cell body of this autonomic neuron lies outside of the CNS. So if we're talking autonomic neurons, what are our 2 choices in the pathway? We either have one before the ganglion, which is preganglionic, or postganglionic. Okay, so the cell body of this autonomic neuron lies outside the CNS. Postganglionic neuron. The cell body of this autonomic neuron lies within the CNS, preganglionic neuron. Okay, good. What's the king of the castle, overall integrating center of the ANS? Hypothalamus, right? It can direct, yep, and tell pituitary what to do. Okay? What are the short nerve branches that connect the ventral rami of spinal nerves to the sympathetic trunk ganglia? What do we call them?
White and gray.
White and gray, rami communicantes, yeah. Okay. True or false? Preganglionic fibers are myelinated, whereas postganglionics are unmyelinated.
True.
That's true. That's a true statement. True, false. Parasympathetic stimulation of blood vessels causes vasoconstriction and increased pressure.
False.
That's false. How would you make that statement true? Sympathetic, right? Good. Okay. 70. What is the layer of the eye's vascular tunic that's pigmented? Choroid, right? Dark, yeah, prevents light scatter. What membrane is attached to the stapes? It's a window, oval window, okay? What's the function of the round window?
Expel.
Get rid of unnecessary.
Expel sounds that we can't hear.
Right, yeah, so to get rid of wavelengths that we can't hear. Okay. What bony labyrinth structure contains the utricle and the saccule? The vestibule, okay? What endolymph-filled structure contains receptors for hearing? Yeah. Scala media, or it's also called the cochlear duct, right? Because the clue is endolymph-filled structure, so you can't just say cochlea. Cochlea is part of the bony labyrinth. Endolymph-filled is the soft membranous structure, which is the cochlear duct. Okay. Okay. Name the gel-like structure embedded within the tips of cochlear hair cells. Starts with an O.
Oxy.
No.
Oh.
Otolithic membrane, yeah. Okay. The incus bridges the gap between the stapes connected to the oval window and the
Alias connected to the tympanic membrane.
incus connected to the tympanic membrane. Good. Sorry, malleus. Malleus. Okay. So 76. What axons decussate in the optic chiasma? Just in general. What do we describe? Medial or lateral? Which axons cross over? Medial, right? The medial axons. And those axons are going to carry what kind of information? Somatic? No. Visceral? Sensory or motor?
Sensory.
Sensory. Sensory. Vision is a sense, right? It's a special sense. Okay. So 77, again, here's another concept that we can discuss. So what structures, with an S, bend the light as it enters the eye? Okay, you have like 3 options that can cause light to move.
Lens.
Okay, so the lens is one. I can't write on this. All right, the lens is one. Even anterior to the lens, the cornea. Okay, so the cornea and the lens can direct light. What else?
The iris.
No. Think fluid.
The vitreous.
The vitreous humor. Can direct light directly to wherever on the retina it needs to go. Okay. So then I can add a number 78. What structure, singular structure, okay, regulates the amount of light that it can enter the eye?
Iris.
The iris. Pupil's just an opening. It's the iris that has the smooth muscle, right, that can either get larger or smaller. So the iris is what controls it, not the pupil. The pupil just goes along for the ride. Okay? All right, nice job. That's a lot of review questions right there. Whew.